Welcome, I'm Nid, a soul guide. That means I support people at many levels in finding greater alignment to your fullest way of living. And that might be through physical body and more enjoyment of your physical body, less pain, better energy levels. Could be emotional, it might be a more spiritual and purposeful sense of direction in your life. And in this video, we are going to be looking at the virtue of patience, as it's something that we can all get a little caught up in losing our patience. To me, the focus that feels the most supportive is where I see myself getting undone and also all my clients. So when we are impatient, we are basically asking ourselves to be out of the present moment, for it to be other than what it is. And that means that we're in a space of non-acceptance. We are not willing to accept what is right now. We're looking for something else, something other. And this can even come up in manifesting something. What am I going to manifest? What am I going to create? We're jumping into the future. And this can actually become almost like a spiritual alternative to anxiety if we're not careful. So we want to make sure that when we are exploring how we can shift out of being impatient, that we're not just transferring it into another way of being impatient. And in other words, that we're still finding a way not to be in the present moment. So it's really easy to say, just be in the present moment. But sometimes the present moment, doesn't feel that great because there's other things you're concerned about for the future, whether it's the future of the collective, of your children, of this planet, or it's the future of, where are you going to live next week? There's so many reasons as to why we can be concerned that what we need may not be present at the time when that need arises. And so we get into this impatience, wanting something to come faster than when it's really necessary and appropriate for it to happen. And you might say to me, yeah, but I need it now, but the universe doesn't think you need it. And so that's a sign that it's an impatience, because you're asking for something to be here in the present moment that isn't. And so if it's not here right now, there is an element which we need to accept, which is that we don't need it right now. And if we are going to need it, it will be served to us at the time that it is needed. But what I really enjoy doing is offering up more practical ways in which you can handle the more existential feelings that come through us, because impatience essentially is an existential feeling around time and not being connected to the timelessness that is really our true nature. Now that can take you a bit too far out, and we do have to live in time, and we do show up and do things at certain times, and so we experience a reality of linear time from being young to being old, and we need to find a way to handle that at an emotional level and a mental level as well. The place that I found accessed my ability to become more patient was using the right side of my brain. Now this is our side of the brain that's a little bit more connected with relations, moving points, timelessness, that more expansive, creative, expressive outlet. And a really beautiful way of working with the right side of the brain is to start to work with those more creative ways in which we receive or express ourselves. And it may be through sense feeling of energy shifting, it could be through visuals, through signs and symbols and shapes and color, or it might be through other senses like smell. And so utilizing these more sense feeling approaches can start to open up that right side of the brain and help us to release some of that impatience. But the reality is, you're probably saying, yeah, but how do I really train the right side of my brain? Because most of us in the Western world and most of the world are trained in education in a very logical way. We have a very linear step-by-step process that is like, this is where I start, that's my goal, and what are the steps I'm going to take to get to my goal. And that works in a very left brain way, but the right brain's not really interested in that. The right brain is like, oh, but what else could exist out there? What else could be an opportunity? What else might be a better outcome than that linear stepping stone that could bring in something even more awesome? So the right brain is about pausing. It's about creating space and extra expansive time in your day, because space and time are connected, right? So if we can create a bit more space around something, sometimes time arises and things flow a little bit more easily. And yet that still maybe doesn't sound very practical. How can you create more time when you've already got a really full day? And I get that. Priority is number one. You always have to come back to prioritizing what is important, and not what is important to your goal, because it's very easy to get caught up in that logical left brain, which will compact and fill up all your time. What you want is that larger intention, that heart space, what's going to fulfill you, what's going to, in the journey, make you feel really satisfied and more content, so that you could potentially feel more present in the journey that you're on. So we want to look at activities that access that right side of the brain for you. So you want to be making space in your day to connect with those senses, to connect with those more relational, engaging activities. And for you, that could be something to do with the visual sense. It might be a more feeling space. Maybe you do some breathing to help you connect. And even just stopping for 5 breaths might be the space that you need to start creating in your day to connect with that right side of the brain. Or for another person, it could be just a little bit of time acknowledging and looking at nature and helping that connection start to stimulate that right side of the brain, the relationship of humans with nature and earth. So we're wanting to open up the things that help your brain feel more expansive, to remember that you are just a micro in this huge, dynamic, beautiful moving cosmos, but that you're also an important piece in all of that moving. And that's what that right side of the brain is going to start to open up. And when we open that right side of the brain, little steps are given to us of just go do this next. Right? So the example could be just go and be in this cafe, have that cup of tea in this cafe. And so you go to the cafe and you're thinking, I don't know why I'm here. This is a bit out of the way. This is a bit bizarre. Like I could be doing something else. But then you meet someone and you get chatting, and that person ends up to be really formative in your next steps of what's going to unfold in your life. And this is how that right side of the brain is opening you up and giving you the next step, because you actually only ever need the next step. Because what may happen after that is so many other possibilities, and we want to remain open to more amazing possibilities. What then starts to happen is that you take one step and then you take another step, and they can seem like you're going in completely opposite directions. You'd be like, well, I'm going this way, but now I'm going this way, and then I'm going this way, and the creativity doesn't make any sense. If we are creating maybe something like a book, you know, the chapters may not arrive. You may not write them in the order of the story. It may be that there's characters that appear who are later in the story, and then other characters appear who are earlier in the story later in your timeline in creating that story and that book. And this is how that right brain relational brings things through when you're ready. And things start to come together and make sense when we've got a bit of retrospective hindsight, a bit of time to look back. And so the invitation here is to really open up and access all of your brain, not just this left side that we're taught about in school of how to think, how to set intentions, how to create goals in our lives and master things, but set that aside and allow this creativity, this relational, spacious part of your brain to bring little ideas, little inspirational moments, little nudges here and there of where you should go, so that you can just take that one step and see what unfolds, and then another step. And this is how the magic of life happens. And when you're in that magic and you're following those nudges, a lot of the anxiety starts to wash away. A lot of that impatience of wanting to be somewhere else is gone because you're satiating the whole of your brain, the whole of you. And I would love to invite you to a really beautiful way to train your right brain. And that is through the Awaken Your Light Body. This is a specific meditation technique, and it's a series of techniques that we move through experientially. And there's very little words that can really explain it because it is experiential of the right brain at a very, very high level. And you're going to be developing that side of your brain, which will open up many things for healing and many things that may be transformed in your life, so that you will have that greater trust and connection with your intuition, that greater full capacity of using left and right. And the change in events, the way in which you navigate the changes in your life will begin to unfold in such a beautiful way. And then one day you turn around and you realize, I'm patient. And I'm okay with where I'm at, and I'm enjoying what's happening and what's unfolding. And I may have a sense of where I'd like to go because that's my intention of where I'd like to see things unfold. But I also know that I'll be going through those steps, that my right brain will pick up and know where to take me. And if you're someone who already uses a lot of intuition, this is going to further ground that into a very embodied way of living, really cohesively integrating and opening up the two sides of the brain. Because we quite often work in a very grounded way with our mindfulness and meditation techniques to really anchor and be present in our feelings and in our body. But with our light body meditation, we are accessing a much bigger field of cosmic energy. And so you can bring in this amazing consciousness that you can then actually integrate with your left side brain, and you can start to really be that person that creates that ripple change in the world through the way that you are in your being. And I'm just sharing with you a little clip from our day 6, which is the final day from the Awaken Your Light Body course from earlier this year. The students on day 6 wanted to ask me some questions, having moved through this process of trusting each step without being given that logical framework that we're normally given. And it's a beautiful, revealing conversation that I am going to be sharing with you next.
Vibrational bodies, or the vibrational bodies are just the preface to get to those?
Yeah, the vibrational bodies are what are going to help stabilize bringing things into your human experience.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
Whereas these are where you're really, yesterday I kind of said, like, and I don't like putting constructs around it, but if there was a construct, it's like the Felonia cocoon is like the light body cocoon, right? That sits outside your soul. So, it's like you do your Inari, which kind of takes you into your aura, and then you would expand out your soul if you could feel what your soul space is like. And then the Felonia is a bigger space that sits around that. And so that's kind of what you're working into. And then you can play with the frequencies that are within that space, right? And that's then what's going to filter down through your soul and through your human experience. And that's why the vibrational bodies aren't chakras, because they're not as close to the body as a chakra, right? They're closer to a light body space. So, but they resonate and are going to help activate and work with chakras, if that makes sense, but not directly. Like, it's not, the Ranthia is not your heart chakra. It just like that's not the way it works. But at a simple construct level,
it's hard to separate this.
It's kind of, you kind of, the energy runs, but it's not the same. It's bigger, but it also will integrate and land into, like the power centers are much more, if you think the first 3 are much more your emotional, physical experience, right? And actually, once we get to the Ranthia, we're not really an emotional experience anymore. We should be moving past that, which is why it's not really a heart connection. right? We're more than moving into that mental fluidity energy of the universal mind, which is why we have that throat, heart work and the pie ear and everything in those upper centers. So in that sense, you kind of have the split of the body in the way the centers will generally resonate. You've got more control over the lower centers, which connects to like your physical experience of life, right? Which is your emotions and your physical way of being. You have, in theory, more control over those two things. Who knows? Sometimes we feel so compulsive, we don't. And then the mental side is those upper centers, right? And that kind of, what are the constructs, what are the grids, what are the ways in which we work? So at the most, if you're going to give yourself that kind of sense of like, where am I working? What do I need to do? But, you know, like with all energy points, you do one thing, it affects another, right? If we're depending on the energy that you set up in the lower centers affects what happens in the upper centers, right? So we always have to come back to, what am I doing in the lower centers? Because they impact the energy input that comes up, right? In terms of grounded experience. And that's going to change and shift your access to what you experience when you go up and out there, that you can then bring back and integrate. So we see that, you know, it's all interrelated, right? It's not that I can just go up there, but if you go just up and out and you don't have this bit working and able to get that all cohesively connected, it's hard to bring stuff back in. Like, I don't know about you guys, but I've met plenty of spiritual people in my life who have amazing gifts, right? But man, they're shit people. Like, they're actually crappy human beings. You know, like their interaction with people can be really rude and really offensive. And it amazes me. They're not doing the human work. Like, I sat through an hour conversation with a guy who clearly had amazing gifts, like amazing psychic abilities. But at the same time, he was such an obnoxious twat. And I was like, you know what? Like, you may have downloaded something really awesome, but until you learn how this needs to be integrated into the human experience and to really work, it doesn't land in a grounded way, right? And therefore, it's kind of a waste of that gift, right? Because it can't have the real beautiful ripple effect that it should have, that we do when we work with the lower centers and we allow ourselves to really integrate it fully. You know, we just become the up and out there escapee. So this is a tool to really help you with going out and drawing in and really doing that in the best way that you're going to do as the human that you're here to be.
And this is why we're pulling in through that center right in the front.
Yeah, exactly. And then allowing and taking the time to do the integration, what we call landing safely. In Darben talk, to make sure we land safely, right? And so we bring it through the Felonia and we allow it to come back into the Renari, and then you might take it into the Ramphia just to help kind of find that balance through, right, mental and emotional body heart. So, you know, it's just allowing yourself that time so that it can land, because otherwise you might just be going up out there and having nice experiences and not really bringing it back in again, right? So we don't want to skim past these lower centers, and you get faster at it, but there's always coming back and revisiting and seeing how they change and what's shifted and playing, you know, with what's there. Yeah, so that it always keeps you back, coming back to this body communication. I think one of the nicest ways that Darben expresses it is that we're all just here to communicate with one another. That's what your human experience here is to do, is just communicate and find different ways of expressing and sharing ways to express and communicate. And we're all just learning to refine and find the most loving ways to do that in as many diverse ways as possible, and to accept all the variations and ways in which we may wish to express the consciousness that light wants to express itself. Yeah, so if we think of it that way, it's that light just wants to express itself and experience expression, receive expression. And then you get to kind of go, oh, well, then how is my vehicle going to express? What's a beautiful way that I can express and communicate something that's moving through? Just gotta sit and edit it tomorrow. And then just delete out the useful bits, right?
Just do a little 10-minute segment, needs chats.
So if this is starting to resonate, have a little touch of flutter in your heart, then have a look and check out the Awaken Your Light Body course that I will be running. It is a powerful and beautiful way to really awaken all of who you are in this lifetime. And that will be the greatest gift that you can give to anyone else, is to be the fullest you.